Good Monday afternoon to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. A little later in the show, we will be joined by Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Talk a little bit about the Browns' win over the Bears, as well as the Cavs' media day out in Independence as the Cavs get ready for training camp. But we begin by talking Browns. Kevin Stefanski talked a little bit about that win over the Bears after reviewing things. That defense was just as good as he thought it was after the game.
Yeah, the defense obviously kept that game close because offensively we didn't start fast. We finished strong, but we didn't start fast. To be able to get those points at the end of the half was a big deal. I thought it was a nice 2-minute drive. I thought the guys were on point, executing at a high level.
Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. And Mary Kay, that defense was led by Myles Garrett. A lot of what Browns fans have been waiting to see. 4.5 sacks, a new franchise record. Myles was wreaking havoc with his defensive line teammates.
He really was. And I'll tell you, it was quite a few days for Myles Garrett. Now, if you remember, he showed up on Friday for his press conference. I called him, shirtless Myles with the winter beanie on. It was sort of a bizarre look for him. And then he proceeded to come out and sort of call on his teammates to step up and make plays, to kind of give a little bit more effort when Myles is doubled and chipped relentlessly like he often is. And so it was just a little bit of a weird day. But it was up to him to go out and sort of put his money where his mouth was after kind of, calling out his teammates a little bit like that. But he did it. I mean, he absolutely did it. Now, again, it was against Justin Fields. It was against a really poor and porous offensive line. But Myles, after speaking up, did exactly what he needed to do. That was go out there, take over the game completely, and make life miserable for Justin Fields.
And when you look at the analytics grade, and we'll take a look at it, a 91.2 pass rush grade, highest mark for Myles since week 3 of 2020, back to wreaking havoc like he had. So Myles Garrett talked yesterday postgame about the need for him to continue to be aggressive and where this defense may go. Here's Myles Garrett.
Feels good, but knowing that we can be even better. It's tough. That's the worst part about it. Had a great game, but you always remember the ones you miss, the ones you were close on. Glad to be able to ball out with those boys. Glad to see them, stay hungry and go feast. But there's still more to come. Yeah, we got too many hungry guys out there who can make plays to kind of sit back and be conservative. We have to go. And it was a game where he was sending us, and we were going in and doing our job. We don't want to play base. We're gonna hunt and take the ball away. We had a couple of chances to take the ball away. Should have got a couple more, but we were able to get off the field. I think we were, one of 11 on third down. So that's a good day. It's almost as good as taking the ball away, but we need to start taking away and scoring, and then I think that's in our future.
And Mary Kay, we've talked about it. Third downs they were great on, but you saw that aggressiveness that had been kind of lacking from the defense the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember, yes, they were extremely aggressive, and they will continue to be. And I think it was good for them to get some of their confidence going, and for everyone to kind of eat at the sack trough. So it was there was enough to go around for everyone. But I think it must be remembered why some of this happened. Once again, Justin Fields held the ball way too long. His offensive line was horrible, and he just wasn't seeing the field well. So it's not going to be like this every week. They're going to have to keep at it. They're going to have to keep trying to get better. And they're not going to be able to kind of get big heads over this performance, because I think you're just not going to get a 9-sack game every week.
Yeah, it's unrealistic to expect that. But you know what? You celebrate them when you get them, because you don't get them very often. Troy Hill, kind of the sentiment of the defense with the way Myles Garrett played.
Man, pay that man again. that's the only thing I kept thinking. Pay that man again. Go get him some more money at that point. That's dominance at his finest. And, he make our job easy back there. So, you gotta love when pass rushers get out there like that. The whole D-line was out there. They played together and they did their thing. So I'm excited about that.
To your point, Mary Kay, the defensive back half was covering a little bit tighter, a lot tighter. So you saw the cohesion that the Browns had talked about earlier in the week as well between the rush and the back half of the defense as well.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Again, you want to keep it in a little bit of perspective. Justin Fields only attempted 20 passes the whole entire game, and he was sacked on almost 50% of those. And he completed only 6 balls. So, yeah, it wasn't a big day where the secondary was tested a lot. They weren't tested deep. He just didn't have enough time to try to get the ball down the field really very often. And it just wasn't the kind of game where you had to worry too much about, how Greg Newsome was doing, how Denzel Ward was doing, because they just weren't not getting the action. But having said that, Greg Newsome did have to leave the game with a calf injury. Hopefully for the Browns, he will be back soon. It won't be anything serious. He did undergo an MRI today, and they should have results back by Wednesday.
Yeah, no update until Wednesday on Greg Newsome, and certainly something that you want to keep your eye on. Well, the other rookie that was taken high in the draft, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and he showed up all over the screen when you were watching that game and graded out appropriately enough. 93.9 yesterday, highest single game grade for any linebacker with a minimum of 20 snaps since 2019, week 17. He also leads all of NFL linebackers with an overall grade of 90.1 for 2021. So, Mary Kay, when you look at that, Browns fans want to see more of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He showed up all over that field, and Koramoah talked about just how being aggressive and getting more comfortable and getting more involved in the offense post-game yesterday. And here's what Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah had to say.
Absolutely. I mean, when you stop the quarterback, you stop the play. So that's, always the number one focus in terms of getting sacks. If the defense of line gets pressures, if the linebacker gets pressures, it makes it easier on the back end. So
once you see that you're going to play that aggressive, does it almost help you rev up or, just get you going?
And I don't even think it might be, the aggression. It's just a mindset that, hey, we're going to get to the quarterback. Hey, we're going to stop this run, and we're going to do these things that help us execute in the long run. So, I think it's always a focus to get to the quarterback again. It's always a focus to be able to go out there, run, have fun, and that's what we did today.
And Mary Kay, he was impressive. I mean, you saw him a little bit in coverage. You saw him with a half sack, coming on a little bit of a delayed blitz, and you saw him play off of linebackers and make plays play off of linemen and make plays in the running game. Anything you want from a linebacker, he did.
Absolutely. That's why they took him in the second round. That's why they were fully prepared to draft him in the first round if it had worked out that way. They believe that he is a first-round linebacker. They're extremely excited about what he brings to the table. The week before, he only played 18 snaps, and it was a little bit of a mystery. But what happened was he got a little dinged in that game, and he had to come out for a little while, and it just the whole transition didn't go all that great. So he was limited last week to 18 snaps, and I think as the weeks go by, you'll see him get more and more action. He'll continue to earn it with those sideline-to-sideline plays, with his good closing speed, with his ability to blitz, to cover, and do all the things that he can do. So versatile.
Yeah, and the one thing Joe Woods and Kevin Stefanski want to make sure is they're not putting too much on him early. Let him get comfortable and understand what he has to do, and then widen it. Kevin Stefanski, though, obviously happy with the play of his rookie linebacker yesterday. Here's Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I thought he played fast. I really thought his ball disruption was really good. We didn't take the ball away yesterday, but we had a bunch of passes defended, and JOK in particular on some balls to the running backs that they were trying to pull in. He got his arm on the ball, so I thought he did a nice job there. And
Mary Kay, that's critical for when you're going to play In the new age NFL where they throw the ball all over the place, a linebacker that can do those things, that's what linebackers are becoming, and the Browns have a pretty good one, or what looks to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if some people saw JOK in person for the first time, they would be a little surprised that he just looks on the smaller side for a linebacker. He almost looks like a safety more so than anything. And from a size standpoint, the safeties are very similar. But he, he is that hybrid linebacker that can do all of those things for you. He is that modern day NFL player that can, again, blitz, cover, tackle, anything that you need him to do. And I think you're just going to see him get better week by week. And this is going to be a really interesting career to watch for JOK.
All right, so the defense pressured Justin Fields 55.2% of the snaps. This is a next-gen stats tweet. 7 quarterback pressures for Myles Garrett on 25 pass rushes. 8 quarterback pressures for Jadeveon Clowney on 25 pass rushes. Is this kind of the way the Browns want to play defense, dialing it up and getting after it? Or do you think it's more a function of you need to do that against a young guy and not give him the time and not give him the looks?
They knew heading in that Justin Fields was going to hold the ball a lot. They knew that. They knew that he had not, ever played or seen very much of what a defense was going to show him in an NFL game. They knew that he had a very bad and porous offensive line. So yes, that's what you're going to be able to do when all those conditions are right for that. I mean, when you look to the week before against the Texans, they got rid of the ball very quickly. They chipped Myles Garrett relentlessly. They had a really good game plan. And the Bears just didn't. I mean, they did not have a good game plan. They didn't do anything to use Justin Fields creatively. And part of the problem with that was that if you can't protect him and, at least give him a little bit of an opportunity to run the offense, then it's going to be a long afternoon, and it was. So the Browns took full advantage of it. They dominated. They did what they were supposed to do. But I think everyone needs to just keep it in the tiniest bit of perspective that it was an overwhelmed, overmatched rookie quarterback, not ready to start, at least not with that game plan, behind a really bad offensive line.
Fair enough. The Bears didn't give him the opportunity to do anything that he does well. So points to the Browns defense for not allowing them to do that. Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, Kay Cabot, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will hear from Odell Beckham Jr. We'll talk chemistry between Odell and Baker Mayfield. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. Some breaking news from the NFL. Mary Kay, you're going to take a look at this. Adam Schefter tweets out that Josh Gordon, former Brown, is going to sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. Certainly hope Josh can do the things he needs to do to keep himself the straight and narrow. But the Kansas City Chiefs getting what could be a productive wide receiver. Mary Kay, they've been looking for a guy that can be the number 2 to Tyreek Hill. None of their young guys have stepped up. If Josh Gordon can keep himself on the field, he's got the ability to be very dangerous with Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, he absolutely 100% does. And the minute I saw that a little bit ago, I retweeted, that this could get really interesting for the Browns if they have to meet up once again with the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. I mean, Josh Gordon versus the Cleveland Browns. What a story that would be after everything that they had been through with their former receiver. I'll never forget all those years of trying to cover Josh Gordon and Johnny Manziel and Justin Gilbert. I used to call them the juvenile Jays. I mean, there was always something going on with those guys. But I've always pulled for Josh Gordon.
Yep.
I remember when the Browns first drafted him, I was the first person. I reached out, I got his phone number. And before anybody else talked to him, I got him on the phone. And we had like a 45-minute conversation. And I kind of got to know him a little bit during that conversation. And I've always kind of pulled for him and hoped that he could get it together off the field. Because if he can do that, he's a very interesting human being, and he's a tremendous, tremendous football player. So hopefully he has kind of gotten a handle on things one day at a time there. And if he can stay on the straight and narrow, it would be quite the success story. And look, the Browns have a success story like that, look at Malik McDowell overcoming all odds, not playing football for 4 years since Michigan State in 2016. And he's starting for the Cleveland Browns now. I mean, it's pretty incredible. So maybe there is hope for Josh Gordon.
Yeah, I always thought he was a really nice guy, and you always sensed, he was just a good guy. You just hope he can get it together, as you said, and keep things together one day at a time. All right, Odell Beckham Jr. returns to the field, plays pretty well. He talked about his chemistry with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield talked about his chemistry, with Odell Beckham Jr., and Odell also talking about that. Odell, 5 catches, 77 yards. Here is Odell on that chemistry with Baker Mayfield.
Absolutely. Just the scheme that we have. We hit a couple throws, things I can definitely work on. Like I said, for the first game back, I just felt like I could never get my legs underneath me. So it was definitely a tough game, but, got my feet wet. Glad to, get that one out the way, 1-0, and, move on to next week.
What was that first hit like?
Needed it. Just needed it. Actually, the first hit came on a pass that I didn't catch, and my shoulder popped out, and I was like, all right, of course, something like that would happen, and we just, it was good to feel that and get back into it, and then, the game went on, and it was a little bit smoother.
Mary Kay, he played a lot of snaps. I mean, I was surprised he was in as much as he was.
Yeah, I actually think that it was probably a little bit too much for the first game. I mean, he must have said 10 times during that post-game press conference that he didn't have his legs up underneath him. And if you don't have your legs, that can be a little dangerous when you're trying to run and sprint full speed, because, we've seen guys lose their legs. I mean, completely lose their legs at the end of a run. And you don't want something like that to happen. But it was a great debut for him. It was a great return for Odell Beckham Jr. I wrote a column during the game saying that I don't think that chemistry is going to be a problem between Baker and Odell this year. I think they're going to have plenty of it. I think that was those were scheme issues in the past. That was a Freddie Kitchens issue. It was a Baker Mayfield not being up to speed in the offense yet in the first half of last year. And I think they're going to be dynamite together for the rest of this year.
First game certainly looked like there was an understanding in that level that you want between the number one receiver and his quarterback. Kevin Stefanski did talk today about just the chemistry based on the limited amount of snaps that they had in game action and just the side work they did. Here's Kevin Stefanski on the chemistry between Baker and Odell.
I know he's been limited, but as you also know, those two in particular got a ton of work off to the side. They got work done in Austin. So that battery has thrown a lot of balls together. So I think you see that work that they put in show up on Sunday, and that's the type of thing that you need in the pass game. You need that with every single one of your receivers, tight ends, running backs. In order to have precision in the pass game, everybody's got to be on point. I thought he was productive, Mary Kay, in those 52 snaps. He was in constant communication with Coach O'Shea, Alex Van Pelt, to make sure that he was good. I mean, any first time back, it's always going to be working through it and getting your wind, that type of thing. But I thought he did a nice job.
And obviously that was your question about the extensive amount of snaps. You like what he brought, though. You saw some of the things that he can do that not many other people can give this offense.
Exactly. And, when I think of Baker and Odell Beckham Jr., it really does call to mind sort of like a Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill kind of a combination. There are just so many different things that they can do. They have so much speed. They can get behind a defense. They can run jet sweeps. If he has to, he can throw the ball, any kind of gadget plays. And think about this. He was out there without Jarvis Landry, who's going to take some attention away from him. So when those two guys are together, I think it will go a very, very long way towards them accomplishing their goal of, they want to win a Super Bowl together. And, if that's going to happen, I think that their best chance is this year.
Yeah, I would agree. So Kareem Hunt had a really, really good game, both catching the ball, running the football. Baker Mayfield talked about Kareem Hunt as well as the evolution of this offensive system.
He's a great back, but I think just the look in his eyes, I think everybody could tell the way he was running. It seemed angrier than usual, And when that happens, just find a way to give him the ball. We're continuing to get better, finding ways to win. There's never going to be a point where you feel like you've reached the graduation level, you've mastered the offensive system. You always want to try to improve. And so for us, we just have to have the mindset, not being college dropouts, continuing to get better, and finding ways to win.
And Mary Kay, when you hear that, it kind of shows you the development of Baker Mayfield as well. In his fourth year, much different quarterback than he was even at the beginning of last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the other thing to remember when you hear Baker talk after these games, he slips in, some Kanye West album references and song references, and you don't know what he's talking about. And all of a sudden, he's talking about late registration, Odell Beckham Jr. and Monstars and all this kind of stuff, right? And then you realize, okay, that, he is just fulfilling what they set forth for him in the quarterback room. So we all have to remember, if it doesn't sound exactly like it makes sense, that's what's going on there. But yeah, he's come a long way. He's growing up. They say there's something in the science world, and I have no idea if it's true, but 25 seems to be that age where where young men really start to completely mature from a brain standpoint. That's debatable. A lot of wives would think it's a lot older than that, but just kidding. But you see Baker, now he's getting a little older. He's getting a little bit more mature. He was really young. These guys are so young when they come into the league. You have to think about that. They're 22 years old, 23 years old. They're just kids, really. And now you're starting to see him turn into a much more mature young man.
Yep, and the other one, Kareem Hunt ran and had an outstanding game. Wyatt Teller on that offensive line talked about Kareem Hunt and putting up so many yards rushing against what was one of the top-ranked rushing defenses in the Chicago Bears. Here's Wyatt Teller.
Yeah, I know he's a great teammate to have, to say the least. But sometimes he'll start talking smack to the D line. You're like, hey, listen here, buddy. You don't have to block him. I do. So if you could ease up. But no, he's a great teammate. He's always going to bring it. I know he had something to prove. He always has a chip on his shoulder. That's how he always runs. That's how he always plays. And he's a great teammate to have. If I give him an inch, he'll take a mile. And that's a good teammate when you're blocking for him.
And Mary Kay, get a kick out of that is don't talk trash to the defensive line and make them angry when I'm the one that gets the first point of contact.
That's very funny. And that's the kind of chemistry that they have on this football team. They've got some really, funny guys. One of the funniest players on the team is Kareem Hunt. He's got a lot of personality. He keeps those guys in stitches. And, so you see a little bit of that. Sometimes it comes through in these interviews, but that was just a terrific game by Kareem Hunt. And I really do think that they should rely on him more than they do. I think he's just such a formidable weapon. And I think he's going to be very instrumental in the run to the playoffs.
What about just takeaways? When you take away what the offense did against a pretty good defensive front for the Bears, what are some of the takeaways from that game for you with the Browns offense?
Well, one of the first things is a negative thing that I think is going to have to be worked on. You can't let Baker Mayfield get sacked 5 times. So they have to figure out, kind of what's going on there and what the Bears were able to do. Now, once again, that is one of the better defensive fronts in the NFL. They were actually a little bit fortunate that Khalil Mack left the game in the second quarter, came back in the second half, but he was out for a significant amount of time. And, he was out for that whole drive at the end of the first half that enabled them to kind of break that game open there a little and give themselves some breathing room. So I thought that was one thing that kind of really hurt the Bears. But I still don't think the Bears would have had any chance to win that game because there was no way they were doing anything offensively. The only way they would have been able to win the game is if their defense had scored a couple of touchdowns. That's the only way it was going to happen. But offensively, you just can't let Baker Mayfield get sacked 5 times. So they've got to shore that up. But other than that, this offense is going to be as advertised. It's got a little bit of everything. It's explosive, and there are untapped resources. I mean, you're just starting to see, oh, that's what Donovan Peoples-Jones can do. Oh, that's what Kareem Hunt can do. You've still got, any given week, there are 3 or 4 guys that didn't even get to contribute hardly in any way, shape, or form. So they're just going to keep it coming all season long.
Yeah, and to your point, David Njoku didn't even get a target. Played 60% of the snaps. They didn't even target him. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, a voicemail of truth and reason, and we'll talk the kicking situation. Chase Mclaughlin, pretty good. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Time to head to the voicemail of truth and reason after that Browns victory over the Bears yesterday.
Hi, Dave. This is Ron Byer. Dave, Sunday, Cleveland, and all of the NFL fan base got a huge sight into what this Cleveland Browns team is capable of accomplishing this year. Starting, in my opinion, with 4 quarters of the best played defensive performance ever by a Cleveland Browns defense, with Myles Garrett engineering a defensive line that was dominant in all aspects, which made the linebackers and defensive backs play up and very aggressive with great tackling. With the defense playing so good, this gave the coaching staff time to figure out the correct offensive game plan of going through Kareem Hunt to get the offense rolling. Kareem's heart, passion, desire in running and catching the football is contagious, and it showed on the field. The specialty team also came to play and did excellent. A total team effort showing what this team is capable of accomplishing during the regular season, playoffs, and Super Bowl.
Okay, Mary Kay, we've tempered it a little bit by mentioning it was Justin Fields and a rookie quarterback. But again, the defense, 1 net yard passing, 47 net yards, 42 plays, 1 of 11 on third downs. Those are all great numbers. You can't expect it every week, but that's how dominant. Those are dominant defensive numbers.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are. And it's just what this defense needed. I mean, this defense was in a situation where it was taking a lot of heat. They overhauled the defense. They have, 8, 9 new starters, depending on what they open in. And Joe Woods was really taking a lot of grief from people. He was sort of, on the hot seat a little bit there. And, Myles was taking some grief. I mean, he actually posted something on Instagram saying, they're saying I fell off. I got to keep that same energy. These guys felt a little bit attacked. They didn't play the way they wanted to against the Texans. They were a little bit embarrassed about the way that they played against Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills. Did not go well. And so they had something to prove. They practiced really, really hard during the week. I watched them very, very closely, and they did. They came out and they played with their hair on fire, and you have to give them a ton of credit for that. Again, I am tempering it a little bit because I think that's important. I think sometimes we do forget to look at, who the Browns played that particular week and why things happened the way that they did. The only way that you're going to really get better and address certain things is if you're really honest about what's happening with the team. And that's why I sometimes point things out that aren't always 100% positive, but that's okay. Because if you have such high expectations for yourself, you want to be able to say, okay, that was great, but now you've got to do it against, Justin Herbert, and you got to do it against Kyler Murray, and you got to do it against Kirk Cousins. And offensively, it's okay to say, yeah, that was a really great offensive performance, but you can't let Baker Mayfield get sacked 5 times. So, it's good to make sure that you're really taking a look at all of the things that are happening on the team.
Yeah, without question. All right, so there was some concern by some, maybe more than some, about the kicking game with Chase Mclaughlin. 4 for 4 on field goals yesterday, made a 57-yarder that had probably 5-6 yards to spare. Kevin Stefanski talked just about Chase Mclaughlin and how he's felt pretty good about him all along.
I've had a ton of confidence in him. That's because I see him do it at practice. He goes out there pregame, had a really good warm-up, so felt good about the length of that 57-yarder. And he's been very consistent, and that's what we're going to need from him moving forward.
And Mary Kay, it's easy to get kind of crazy with the kickers, and you see him where he misses an extra point or something, and it's concern. I think he alleviated a lot of concerns with the way he was kicking the football yesterday. But, the life of an NFL kicker, it's week to week.
It really is. And this is the important thing to remember. And the thing that we didn't give Phil Dawson enough credit for is you've got to be able to kick in the weather. Now, yesterday was an absolutely beautiful day. Perfect day. It wasn't windy. It wasn't rainy. The ball wasn't slick. So those are the kind of conditions where you would expect a kicker to succeed. Do you expect him to make a 57-yarder? No, not necessarily. But so that was amazing. So good for him. But he's going to have to keep passing those tests. And of course, the biggest tests will come in November and December when the football feels like a brick and, when it's wet and rainy and windy.
Yeah. And you know what? You can breathe a sigh of relief. Looked good there. Let's see if he can continue to do that. The other thing that has been very impressive has been Demetric Felton, not only in the offense, we've seen that, but the punt returns. He actually leads the NFL in punt return yardage with 129 yards in punt returns. And he's got that elusiveness that you kind of get the feeling he may be able to break one or two of those during the year. He's that kind of electric return guy that Browns haven't had in a while.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. He is so shifty and agile and fast, and the moment's not too big for him. And it looks like they finally have a return guy that they can get excited about. It's been a long time coming. To have some returns that this team can really count on to get that great field position. He can break one at any time. And once again, he uses spin moves and different things. He breaks tackles. And I think it's going to be fun for them to have a guy like this that can contribute not only on those returns, but you can throw him in on offense as well.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will talk a little bit more about defense with Kevin Stefanski. Then we'll look forward just a little bit to get Mary Kay's thoughts on the Minnesota Vikings up next for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. We continue talking Browns with Kay Cabot, beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Kevin Stefanski talked about the outstanding defensive performance and the way that line just kept attacking.
Yeah, anytime you can have that type of production from your defensive line from a sack standpoint, it's, pretty rare. The pressure has been there, as we've talked about. The pressure's been there, and those sacks seem to come in bunches. But those are three explosive, long athletes that we need to continue to get better. That really has to be our mentality as a defense, as an attacking defense, whether we're bringing 4, 5, 6, doesn't matter. We got to attack, and I thought the guys did a nice job yesterday.
And Mary Kay, I do like hearing that. They want to be an attacking defense, and I think they're set up to do that. He was talking about Takk McKinley, Jadeveon Clowney, and Myles Garrett. Those are the three guys that they kind of rotated in that can get after it. But I want to see that mindset continue. I didn't feel like they were as attacking of a defense first two games as they were yesterday.
Oh, yeah, and you'll see more of that. Myles talked about that after the game where, look, we've got all these talented guys. We need to go. And that's what Jadeveon Clowney loves to do, of course. That's what Takk McKinley loves to do, and other guys can do it too. And then you can blitz with JOK. So there'll be plenty of pressure on these quarterbacks. The thing is how they beat it. And one of the ways, obviously, that the Texans were able to beat it was by getting that ball out very, very quickly, by using, some mobility and different things like that. So teams will try to neutralize these guys as much as possible. And once again, I asked Kevin Stefanski this today. I mean, how do you coach Myles up to remember that there are not many teams that are going to let him just try to be blocked one-on-one like that. They're going to have other guys hanging off of him because they know job number one on defense for the Cleveland Browns is to contain Myles Garrett as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, and if you don't do that, ask the Bears what happens. Time of possession, Browns almost had a 2-1 margin, and that's a function of the third downs where they only allowed 1 of 11 to be converted. Again, a great job where a point of emphasis was. Now let's talk about the AFC North and the AFC in general. So Browns tied with the Ravens and Bengals at 2-1, and there are only 2 unbeaten teams remaining in the AFC, and some surprising ones in the Broncos and Raiders. The Chiefs are 1-2 on the year, and it just goes to show, people were a little disappointed with the win over the Texans. Win is a win.
Absolutely, 100%. And here's the thing to remember when you watch these teams move through their seasons. The teams that won their divisions last year, they have a much harder schedule. The Browns have a third-place schedule. That is going to really help them as they move throughout the season. The Pittsburgh Steelers, on the other hand, have the toughest schedule in the NFL, and the Ravens have a really, really difficult schedule. They've got the first-place schedule, and they've got the second-place schedule, and that's difficult. The same thing with the Chiefs. They have to play the best teams in the NFL all the way through. And the Browns, on the other hand, are getting a little bit of a break along the way with that third-place slate. So I think that makes a difference. But yeah, I think it's going to get pretty interesting here as they go along. I think we all thought it was going to be a 2-horse race between the Ravens and the Browns, and I think that will continue. But the Bengals are making a little noise. They're not going to be an easy out. They're not going to make it easy. And there are some other really, really good teams in the AFC. The thing is, it's so early. I don't think you really know how this thing is going to go or what a team is all about until you get about midway through the season, and then you start to realize who's for real and who's not.
So Kevin Stefanski returns to the organization where he spent a lot of time, the Minnesota Vikings. Browns go on the road to play a road game, and Kevin Stefanski was asked about going back to play the Vikings in Minnesota.
Obviously spent a long time there, have great friends there, but it's really going to be a great challenge for our team. I think it's a really good football team. We'll start getting to work on them this afternoon as coaches But you think about some of our players when they go back home or whatever, you got to have a talk with them. You don't have to have a talk with me. I understand what's at stake. It's a really big game versus a really good team. So we got our work cut out for us.
Mary Kay, what are some of the things you see with the Vikings and some of the areas of concern for the Browns with Minnesota?
Well, first and foremost, Kirk Cousins is playing really well. Now, the thing about Kirk Cousins is there's almost no one that knows him as well as Kevin Stefanski does. He knows him really, really well. Position coach, offensive coordinator, and so I think that will work in the Browns' favor, that they know him as well as they do. Dalvin Cook did not play in this last game when they beat the Seahawks. So if he's healthy and ready to go, that's obviously somebody that's going to be very, very difficult to stop. Their version of Nick Chubb, and then Danielle Hunter, their version of Myles Garrett. So they've got some talent on this football team. It's going to be on the road, of course, and in a very loud and hostile environment. And that they want to prove that they're a better football team than 1-2. They feel good about the fact that they just beat the Seahawks, a really good team. And I think they're going to give the Browns their best shot.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Mary Kay, as always, appreciate the time. Appreciate you joining us on Monday. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot. Be sure to read her in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Kevan Arnold will join us. Kevin's from the Voice of the Land podcast. We'll talk a little bit of Browns. We'll get into Cavs Media Day as well. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with that dominant defensive win over the Chicago Bears on Sunday. Cornerback Troy Hill talked about the Browns and that performance that allowed just 1 yard of net passing. Here's Troy Hill.
I think I looked up on the sideline one time, and I'm like, 1 yard passing, because you never really realize during the game, them sacks they take away from the passing yards. Obviously, we was out there strapping stuff, but when you look up and you see 1 yard pass, I'm like, I ain't never been a part of that in my whole life. So, that's just the dominance that we was having out there. And like I said, we just got to keep building on it and keep on coming out there week by week and doing our thing. So, that's got to be history if you ask me. Is it?
Yeah.
I don't think nobody ever did that.
Let's welcome in Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Kevan, keep in mind, Troy was part of the top-ranked defense, the Los Angeles Rams, last year. So he's seen some dominant defensive performances, but yesterday's impressed him quite a bit.
I had to do a double take when I saw that at the end of the game, and I started hearing the announcers say that at the end of the game. 1 net passing yard for the Bears. And I know you and Mary Kay were talking about how you have to put it in perspective of who the Browns were facing. They were going up against rookie Justin Fields. We know what kind of talent Justin Fields has from his time at Ohio State, and in this state, how big Ohio State is here. We have followed Justin Fields for the last couple of years. We know what he can do and his athleticism. The Browns keeping them to 1 net passing yard. This is the professional ranks. It is tough to win every single week. It may come off as cliche to some people when you hear Coach Stefanski and so many people in this league say it, but it's so true. There's only a small percentage of guys that start from Pee Wee football and make it all the way to the NFL. And for that defense to only allow 1 net passing yard, I was astonished. Like I told you, Dave, I had to do a double. Sometimes I think I did a triple take when I looked at the box score on ESPN app yesterday.
Yeah, it was. You watched it. It was like, wow, they only had 1 net passing yard. Kevin Stefanski talked about Myles Garrett and the need for him to be Myles Garrett for the Browns.
Myles was outstanding. Really, the entire defense was outstanding. But if you point an individual, it would certainly be Myles in that effort yesterday. He's our best player. I think he knows that. We know that, and the other teams know that. So he's going to get a lot of attention. We're gonna move him around. We're gonna do different things with him, and we need him to play great. And again, it's no secret to anybody.
Kevin, I kind of like the fact that he kind of put the pressure on himself Friday by saying needed to play well, needed everybody else to play well, and then he went out and did what he called for.
We've heard this team so many times say the right thing in the past and never go out and execute it. For this team to say it and be about it every single week, that's probably the best part. Is it's not, they're believing in everything that they're saying, everything that's being told to them, and they're taking that to how they execute on the field week in and week out. And if there's mistakes that happen in one game, you don't see the same mistakes the next week. And that's one of the biggest elements that Coach Stefanski has brought to this culture. You're not going to make the same mistakes. I don't think he's lost back-to-back games. So after a loss, they have not lost back-to-back games as of yet. And they're able to hold serve in their first 2 home games, which you have to generate that as your stable point and then go get some key road games to really build who you're going to be. What is your identity every single NFL season? And you find that out even more so on the road. And they do have a tough test on the road in a hostile environment this weekend.
Well, and the question is, what do you do with Myles Garrett to try to help him? Well, Kevin Stefanski talked about just the importance of moving defensive linemen around and why that helps them. Here's Kevin Stefanski.
I don't know if we did more. I know we've certainly done it the first 2 ball games, moving those guys around. I could just tell you from an offensive perspective, it is harder when you move the guy around and you don't know where he's going to be. And you may want to turn the line to him. You may want to chip him. Those type of things. So as you move those guys around, it makes life a little bit harder on the offense.
And Kevin, you have to identify where Myles is or where Jadeveon is, what type of defense is, who the middle linebacker. Give the offense more things to have to identify when you're at the line of scrimmage.
Dave, you and I had talked about this leading up in the offseason about what Jadeveon Clowney could do for Myles Garrett and vice versa. And we knew that they were going to find a way to interchange them. And as I was watching that game, more so on the replays, where Myles Garrett was getting his sacks from, where Clowney, where the rest of the Browns were getting them from, it was kind of out of position at times. Yes, Myles Garrett had a burst, and he has a burst off the edge every single time. He is a nightmare for all left tackles, sometimes even right tackles if he's coming off the other side throughout this league. So it doesn't matter who's over there. You're going to have a long day when you have to go against the Energizer Bunny, the athletic Myles Garrett the whole time. But if you have to now not only try to get him on the edge, but now you got to point him out where he's coming from the inside. And then Clowney is coming out from the edge, and then he switches back to the inside. And now you're developing some of the younger guys like Malik McDowell and JOK from the linebacker position. Guys coming from all different angles. It is so hard to keep your offense consistent and in a rhythm when you're just so concerned about which guy, which speed guy, which athletic guy, which power guy is coming next.
Yeah, and what it allows you to do is you identify where you think the weakest link is, and that's where you focus Clowney, you focus Garrett, and you just try to get those matchups. The Browns were able to do that all game long, and that's why, taking it back, that's what led to a 1 net passing yard for the Chicago Bears yesterday. All right, Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast and I, we're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We're going to shift our focus a little bit. It was Cavs Media Day. We will hear from Darius Garland, Kobe Altman, as well as Kevin Love, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We're going to shift our focus a little bit, talk some NBA basketball. Media day for the Cavs to get ready to open up training camp tomorrow. Darius Garland talked about how working out with Team USA before they went over for the Olympics has benefited him.
That really boosts my confidence for sure. Just have my name and just wearing that USA across my chest. I mean, that really built my confidence. And then I learned a lot, actually. Especially just from hearing Coach Pop talk or just different guys in the locker room. I mean, I think I learned a lot. So I'm trying to just implement that into my game this year and just try to bring it to the Cavs.
Well, let's welcome back in Kevan Arnold. And Kevin, it's important to remember, Darius Garland, a young guy. I think he played 5 college games before he got hurt and played 1 year. So he is young. And he could be a guy who is on the verge of becoming an NBA All-Star for a number of years.
You hear guys around the league and some of the best players, including Steph Curry and some of those guys at that USA camp before they headed over for the Olympics, they mention Darius Garland. When they talk about any Cavs player, you talk about Colin Sexton, but you're starting to talk about Darius Garland. And the best teacher for any young player is experience. And what better way to get that kind of experience and experience at a high level when you're going up against some of the best in the league. Now, we know that the USA did not take all the best players. Not all the best players went into camp and agreed to go to the Olympics, but you still got a guy like Kevin Durant and some of these other guys that have been in this league for so long and have played at the highest level, have played against the best the entire time. And Darius Garland is making an impact, helping them get ready as the NBA game grows globally around the world, and it's much tougher these days to win in the Olympics than it was in the past, especially back in 1992 when the Dream Team, the professionals, came to the ranks of the Olympics. So getting that experience against some of the best will just take Darius Garland's game, or should take his game, to higher levels this year, and that's what JB Bickerstaff and this team is looking for.
So Kevin Love was asked about the potential of a buyout from the Cavs. Has a couple of years remaining on his contract. Here's Kevin Love about the potential of having his contract bought out.
The buyout had never even come up. I think that's speculation, and you know, sometimes shit is thrown against the wall and people are seeing who's going to read it and who's going to see it. So for me, it's never been a thing. I'm still sitting here year 14, you know, as a Cav, and as, you know, listen, it's a young team. That's, you know, obviously where this is headed and where this is going. But what I'm going to try to be is, and like I've told Kobe and JB, a positive force. Wherever this ends up, I just want to make sure that at least internally and here when we walk into this building, that it's positive. When I, you know, go to, well, it used to be Quicken Loans Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, I want it to be positive. And it's the same thing last year. We know what's going on, you know, within the locker room. Everybody had their moments, me included, maybe me specifically, but I want to make sure that it's going to be positive so long as I'm donning a Cavs jersey.
Kevin, that's good to hear. It really wasn't always positive a year ago, so maybe he's going to embrace the role a little bit more.
He needs to, because if this team is going to bank on all of this young talent that they have, Garland, Sexton, Allen, you bring in Lauri Markkanen from the Chicago Bulls, and you have young players all over the place. Isaac Okoro, looking for him to take steps forward in year number 2. Kevin Love needs to take on, if he's still going to be on this team, he needs to take on that leadership role and helping these young guys grow throughout the year. I go back to that game in Toronto where he just kind of threw the ball in, lackadaisical, no attention to detail. Those are the kind of little things that young players have, and they get impressed on. They're very impressionable players when they are so young. They're trying to learn this game. They're trying to utilize any sort of experience or teaching or advice they can get from some of the veteran players and their coaches. And when things like that happen, when you're trying to build a young culture and a young team to try to get back to competing in the Eastern Conference, let alone competing for the top and against the best in the West, you need veteran players to help lead the young guys that are going to be your core, they're going to be your future, and they need to be that positive impact, as Kevin Love said. So hopefully, like the Browns live up to what they say, hopefully now Kevin Love is in that place to accept that role and be that positive influence.
And again, he needs to be healthy in order to be able to help them out on the court. All right, Kobe Altman asked about all of the talk about Ben Simmons. Are the Cavs interested? Here's Kobe Altman.
I'm not going to get into any rumors or hypotheticals regarding any other player in the NBA. All I can tell you is I'm extremely excited about what we have in-house right now. And the young guys that continue to get better, the guys we traded for, the guys that I can see from afar. I'm really excited about tomorrow's practice. That's where our focus is. How do we make these really talented young men in their own right come together and be successful and start to win. That's where our focus is.
All right, Kevin, I've asked you this before. I'll ask you again. Would you be interested in Ben Simmons? If so, how much would you be willing to give up for him?
Simple answer, Dave, no. I know what kind of talent that Ben Simmons had coming into this league and what he still has from a defensive side and how he can play make for others. But it just feels like he is a reclamation project. And for a young team, we talk about culture all the time. The Browns have found theirs. Cavs are looking for their culture. You're bringing a reclamation project, and the things we've heard about him, whether true or not, and trying to have a guy try to rebuild his career while you're trying to build a culture at the same time, to me, that just doesn't mesh. And listening to Kobe Altman there, that just shows me that in the city of Cleveland, the one consistent thing about our front offices, we have general managers that do a great job at saying a whole lot without saying anything.
Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Kevan, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for the time, Dave. Always appreciate it.
All right, Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll be back here tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest, Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan and the Browns Radio Network, halftime and postgame, and Tim Bielek, reporter for The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. That is tomorrow at 4. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.